Hello, Geneva, and welcome to Officially Speaking. I'm your host, Kevin Starr. Each month, we sit down with one of our local elected officials or appointed board members to get the latest on what's happening right here in these City Council chambers. Today, we're joined by Historic Preservation Commission Chairman Scott Roy. Scott, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you.
Can you start off the show by telling our audience members that maybe are not quite familiar with the Historic Preservation Commission, what is your role and responsibility in leading this board?
The role of the commission has three major components. The first one is to preserve the historic character of the city of Geneva. The second role is more of an educational component, where we try to educate people, the community, on the historic significance of the city. The third component is to promote designation of historic properties into a district or as an individual designation.
What is the expertise of some of the Historic Preservation Commission board members, and what backgrounds do they bring to this group?
Yeah, I think the major component that all of our commission members come with is an understanding that the historic character of the city is very important to the economic and the vitality of the community. So that's the first thing that they come to us, but from there it steps off. We've got a broad group of people. In our current commission, we've got 2 real estate people, an architect, some retired teachers, and some people that are in facilities management. And also we've got an archaeologist on our commission at this time.
On average, how many cases would you say the HPC reviews in a year?
It's my understanding that we've done, last year we did 124 cases. Not all of those come to the commission meetings. We've set up a process where our preservation planner can review certain minor improvements or minor changes to buildings. So we see about 25% of those.
This is a little bit more of an in-depth question. Does every building project in the historic district or individually designated historic landmark property get reviewed by the HPC during their monthly meetings?
Typically not all of them. The trigger for us seeing a property is a building permit application. So someone comes in, tells city they want to do a certain project on their property. If it requires a building permit, then it goes into a pool where we would potentially look at that. And then, like I said previously, if it's a minor improvement, minor change, that would be handled by our preservation planner. And if it's a major change, then it would come to the commission. I think we see about 25% of the projects that come into the city we actually look at.
During the course of this past year, the Historic Preservation Commission and then the City Council had an in-depth look at the Historic Preservation Ordinance. Mm-hmm. Can you summarize some of the changes that were made and approved ultimately by the City Council?
Sure. Went through quite a process. It was a 2-year process that we went through. The ordinance that we were working with was originally 20 years old, and so the preservation community has changed, processes have changed, and the city has changed too. So the primary reason for the change in the ordinance or the editing of the ordinance was to adapt to some of the changing preservation philosophies out there, and also to kind of tighten up the process, and also we were doing some things that weren't in the ordinance that we wanted to memorialize within an ordinance. So the first item that we did, that we kind of tightened up, was designating districts and individual properties. We had a general process in the old ordinance. This really looked at the process in detail. It looked at owner notification, fee schedules for what it would cost to designate a property or a district, all of those things that are necessary to get your property designated. The second component was to add in some of these processes that were coming to us, but we really didn't have a formal process. And some of those involved demolition within the historic district, and what type of process do you need to go through. Also, there were hardship issues, so if for some reason you couldn't do what the ordinance said, that you had a way to prove a hardship and maybe get past some of that stuff. So that's primarily what the ordinance did.
This past year, the HPC also had another big project, and that was the windows policy. Can you summarize for our audience what were some of the changes and regulations on that process?
Sure. What happened is we had a window policy. We had developed a window policy, and it was pretty stringent. And at that time, it complied with the Department of Interior standards that we typically follow in all of our case studies. And over time, the state and national levels of historic preservation had kind of changed their view of how to handle windows. And so that we kept everything nice and consistent, we adapted the new processes, new policy that the state and federal levels adopted. And what that did is it primarily, first and foremost, we want to make sure that repair is the first thing that someone looks at if they want to repair, if they want windows. But if that financially is not feasible, we allow them to use aluminum-clad windows on the street facing and the views we can see from the street. But we just ask that the profile of the original window is still complied with, but you can, instead of just using wood, you can use a different material.
Geneva has a great amount of history, as we outlined previously. How does the Commission go about balancing the tradition and historical architecture of the city versus growth and development looking towards the future?
Yeah, I think our Commission does a pretty good job of that. As I said before, we're all interested in preserving the character of Geneva, but we're not looking at stopping Geneva in time. We're not looking for a 1950s Geneva or a 1970s Geneva or an 1800 or a 1900 Geneva. So we understand that there's growth and development within the whole community and even in our historic district. So while we want to maintain the character of the districts and the designated properties, we also know that things are going to change, and our primary goal with that is to make sure that it's compatible and complementary to the existing fabric of Geneva. I think a success for us would be to have a historic building and a new building sitting next to each other, and you know the era of each of those buildings, and they fit well together.
National Historic Preservation Month is coming up in May. Can you outline some of the programs or events that are going to be taking place and where people can find more information?
Yeah, we every May we celebrate Historic Preservation Month, and we don't have all of our programs and presentations firmed up yet, but in general we are celebrating the 50th anniversary of the Historic Preservation Act that was enacted in 1966. And so we're going to celebrate the anniversary of that. We do this periodically, usually every other year. We recognize projects that have gone on over the last 2 years that we consider as a success, and we promote them. They get the mayor presents them a certificate and that type of thing, and so those are the main things. But the place to go is to check the Geneva website, and they will have the programs that we're going to roll out in May.
For audience members looking for more information on the Historic Preservation Commission, can you tell us when your meetings are held and where they can find that information on our website?
Sure. Yes, our meetings are held once a month, the third Tuesday of every month, 7 o'clock p.m. in City Council chambers. And the great thing about Geneva is they have a fantastic website, and all of our resources are there. On the Friday before our meeting, an agenda comes out with the whole packet of information, and you can check that out on the Geneva website, see what's going to be presented at the meeting. We also have a number of other things on that website. We have a preservation plan that has been developed. We've got design guidelines, the window policy that you mentioned, and a number of other resources that we're working on to place on the website, so you can check that out. And then we have a preservation planner here that's just fantastic. Lots of resources, lots of experience. And his name is Michael Lambert, and he works part-time for us on Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. And he is always available at City Hall to give him a call and get any answers to questions you might have.
That is all the time we have for Officially Speaking. I'd like to thank Scott Roy for his time and insight into the Stork Preservation Commission.
All right, thank you very much for having me.
We'd also like to thank you for watching. We'll be tuning in next month to get the official word from your elected and appointed officials.